Welcome. We're here explaining the joke. Pokemon, the highest grossing franchise in the world, with 122 games, over 14,000 different trading cards, and at the time of this video, 1,010 different Pokemon. And they all suck. Now that the clickbait is out of the way, let me make my point. Pokemon at its core is a mascot series. It focuses on giving you hundreds of different characters so that everyone can find at least one that they bond with. This is the exact same tactic used by its better counterpart, Digimon, and even other IPs like Star Wars, My Hero Academia, and the entirety of the MCU. All of these have hundreds of different characters, and they all range in a scale from unforgettable to horrendously boring. But why is every single Pokemon awful, but say Ornfrita isn't? Well, the answer is simple actually. Ornfrita is a citizen of Ryloth, who during the height of the Galactic Senate began embroiling himself with the Republic in an attempt to amass more wealth for himself. He was a trusted advisor to Emperor Palpatine due to his ease of corruption, fueled by a never-ending greed for wealth and luxury. However, when his planet was invaded, he didn't ignore it. He chose to use his influence to beg for help in the fight for his planet, and even allied himself for a time with his political rival, where they finally buried the hatchet, at least for a while. War broke out in Ryloth once more, and Ornfrita had chosen a side this time, fighting against his rival in the name of the Empire. All this came to an end when Darth Vader arrived to clean everything up, and he put it best when he said,
He will put his own interests first, Ryloth's interests second, and the Empire's third.
This character, that has maybe 30 seconds of screen time across the movies, and a couple episodes in the animated series, is still fleshed out. We understand his goals, his ambitions. We can even infer some of his past due to his actions and what we know about his race. Now, let's look at a random Pokemon. I actually like Vikavolt. It has a great design, cool evolutionary line, and a dope voice. But let's look at its Bulbapedia entry. We get some description about its biology and how it was once used in a fight in the anime. We also get a mention about how they're used for races due to their speed, which is an interesting piece of world building. And that's it. No mention of how its personality fits with the gym leader Sophocles, being the only other Pokemon he uses, no special move or ability related to how fast they are, nothing. Just a couple Pokédex entries and a cameo in the anime. And that's fine. All of this is fine. Because Pokemon is for kids, right? Just like Digimon. Kids shows don't need to be complicated. But there's one big difference. Digimon can talk. Or rather, they can communicate. They're individuals, beings with lives and wills of their own, with personality. And yeah, we have Pokemons with personality, with entire movies dedicated to them, with episodes about that Pokemon and its trainer, even the rare side quest in the mainline games. And that's what infuriates me, because it shows they can do it. They can make every Pokemon special. They can make every single Pokemon great and memorable. But they choose not to. Because people will still buy that Charjabug plushie because it looks cute. Or because it was part of their team in their first playthrough of Sun and Moon. And yes, people do make personal memories out of almost all Pokemon they catch. But I'll take a guess that those belong in the minority.
For Jody to get rid of it.
Yeah, and we do see the Pachirisu on the field, and the crowd goes.
Pachirisu, for example, one of dozens of Pikachu clones, was the linchpin in the team that won the Pokemon World Championship in 2014. This unexpected squirrel managed to take down dragons, Godzilla, and even a lawnmower. It was wild, and the community loved that little guy for months, doing fan art, videos, and just telling everyone on the street about Pachirisu. And what did Game Freak do with his fake Pikachu's sudden burst of popularity? They gave away a copy of him online. That's it. Let's take note of this for later. Pokemon X and Y was groundbreaking for Pokemon in several ways. It introduced the same 3D model we would see for the next 50 years, several quality of life changes that were promptly ignored in the next game, and building on what Pokemon Black and White started, it introduced one of the greatest stories the main series games ever had. AZ was the former king of the Kalos region, over 3,000 years ago. People used several Pokemon in their day-to-day life, but AZ had only a little Floette as his partner, a living memento from his late mother. One day, a war broke out, and despite the king's demands, his Floette was taken away from him, forced into a war it couldn't stop, and it tragically passed away. The king, flooded with grief, built a machine to bring his Floette back to life, and after sacrificing dozens of Pokemon, got his best friend back. But that wasn't enough for him. He sacrificed even more Pokemon to destroy both sides of the war, ending all suffering in the world with one final cruel act. The Floette was horrified at all the lives that were destroyed to bring her back, and left. AZ spent 3,000 years repenting for his sins, and only after he helped a 10-year-old kid destroy the weapon he created did the Floette return, ready to forgive the king. This Pokemon wasn't a legendary, it wasn't a partner to one of the anime's current protagonists, it wasn't even a Pikachu clone. But Game Freak decided to encapsulate everything this Pokemon is into a single story told in the background. You didn't have to read the Pokédex and make up a story yourself for what the Pokemon could be like. You saw it, you experienced it, you cried, just like AZ, when Floette returned. I did. The Pokemon anime does try to replicate this feeling several times. Meowth's backstory shows how a character we know and love became who he is, how he learned to talk for love, and how others of his species differ from him. Stoutland's story with the Litten is an incredibly sad short story that frames it from being just about a big old dog into a found family dynamic where both Pokemon grew together. Ash releasing his Butterfree is a perfect display of letting go, while also showing how some Pokemon are meant to be wild, because they aren't just a cute plush with a stat block for tournaments, they're characters. But how could they fix that? Every new game gets more and more Pokemon, and Game Freak sure doesn't care about quality control, so they quite literally won't do anything beyond the bare minimum. But let's imagine for a second that they care about their player base. While at first I hated the newer games for cutting the national dex, I think newer installments should go even further and limit each game to having, let's say, 150 Pokemon. Setting aside replayability and game design for a moment, Game Freak would have to do about 80 different quests. One for each Pokemon minus their evolutions, depending on how much they can work with the idea. Some quests would be longer, others shorter, but besides wanting to beat the Elite Four and whatnot, we would have 2 of those be main quests that you need to progress the game. One for the box legendary, and one for your starter. Yeah, your starter. That Pokemon 90% of us do not take off our team until beating the game. Putting aside how cool or cute their designs are, why is Sceptile more important to you than Samurott or Typhlosion? Pokemon isn't a hard game for anyone, let's be honest. So imagine catching a Hatenna, not because you think it's going to help round out your team, but because you want to do its quest. See how the Pokemon fits better into a more offensive role in your team, or maybe be a support. Not just because you saw its moves on Cerebi, but because the game taught you how the Pokemon likes to fight, and how you can collaborate with it. When you finally evolve it into a Hatterene, It won't be just because you had it grind on Rattata for 45 minutes, but because your bond with it grew strong enough for it to reach a new stage in its life. Walking around for an hour till your Riolu has enough friendship points to evolve doesn't mean anything to you, let's be honest. But having to travel to the mountains to help it train would be something you experienced just for your Riolu. And it will be memorable. This might seem like too much for Game Freak to do, and you'd almost be right if we were talking about Pokemon on the DS. And still, Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon has a 22-chapter story, so it's definitely feasible. But Pokemon is now on the Nintendo Switch, the same console that can play Skyrim with, from what I counted, about 561 different quests. The same console that has Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom, with 130 and 253 quests respectively. And this is not counting the Koroks. Is every quest in those games a banger? Of course not. But this shows that the Switch can handle a high density of quests, of content. And remember, I'm not asking for a monumental feat from an indie company. I'm asking this from the company that owns the highest grossing IP in the world. But this won't happen. As much as I want to, as much as hundreds of other companies might want to, because Game Freak doesn't want Pokemon to be like that. They want each one to be an image, a shirt, a poster, a trading card, a plushie, a cosplayer, a keychain, a puzzle, a pen, a food, a notebook, a hat, a pop, a wallet, socks, a lollipop, honey, soda, a ring, a watch, a toothbrush, a battery. I'm sorry. Pokemon, despite everything, is merchandise. And it'll forever be that. Because that's what keeps the lights on. And boy, do they need a lot of lights. See, I understand that. I get that. But Pokemon is always going to sell. The new games are always going to be the top sellers of any Nintendo console. The fanbase that Pokemon managed to generate is one of a kind. Easily one of the most dedicated and creative in the world. And that's why Pokemon doesn't suck. Because we care enough about them to make them better. Be it with the games or with the community in general. We don't let Pokemon suck. Each and every one of those little cuddly creatures that has a special place in your memory is there for a reason. And as time goes on, when you spot that one plushie in the wild, or on the art of a card, you realize that Pokemon became special. Special to you. Special to us. So why aren't they special to Game Freak?